Black Thursday, the second attack on Schweinfurt, October 14th, 1943. Over the heart of Nazi Germany, the sky burned. Hundreds of American B-17 flying fortresses flew straight into the teeth of the Luftwaffe without long-range fighter escort. Knowing the odds, knowing the cost, by dusk the world would call it Black Thursday. This is the story of the second attack on Schweinfurt, the mission that shook American air power, that scarred the 8th Air Force, and that nearly ended daylight bombing forever. A mission of courage, chaos, blood, metal, and fire, fought at 25,000 feet. Why Schweinfurt? Because deep inside this Bavarian town lay the heart of every German panzer, truck, aircraft, and U-boat. Ball bearings, small, invisible, essential. 5 factories, including the massive Schweinfurter Kugellager, Werke produced nearly 2/3 of Germany's entire ball-bearing output. Destroy them, and Hitler's war machine would grind to a halt. The U.S. 8th Air Force believed in a simple equation: precision bombing equals victory. But Germany had its own equation: protect Schweinfurt at all costs. After the first attack in August 1943, which destroyed some factories but cost 60 B-17s, both sides prepared for a second round. This time, the Luftwaffe was ready. England, early morning, October 14th, 1943. The cold hung thick in the air as crews walked silently to the briefing huts. Inside, cigarettes glowed. Coffee steamed. Faces tightened as curtains opened on a giant map. The red string revealed their destiny. Briefing officer: "Gentlemen, today's target is Schweinfurt." A murmur, a swallow, a few curses under breath. The officer continued: "No full fighter escort will be available after we cross into Germany. Expect heavy resistance." This was the price of daylight bombing. This was the doctrine of the 8th Air Force: face the enemy in the open sky. Crews scribbled notes: flak zones, Luftwaffe airfields, radio frequencies. But every man in that room already knew today would be hell. One by one, the B-17 flying fortresses taxied across fog-covered runways. Over 291 bombers lifted off across England. Fleets from the 1st, 3rd, and 2nd Air Divisions. Their formations rose like massive steel staircases into the sky. Pilot Lieutenant Jack Shaw from the 305 Bomb Group later said, "We didn't fly airplanes, we wrestled them." The fortresses were heavy, loaded with 5,000 pounds of bombs, and gasoline tanks filled to the brim. Climbing to 25,000 feet took nearly an hour. The air thinned, the cold sharpened. The Great Armada began drifting toward Germany. Below them, Europe slid past in silence. They expected German fighters. They expected flak. But they didn't expect this: a jet stream of winds over 100 miles per hour blew formations apart like leaves. What should have been tight defensive boxes became scattered, broken chains of bombers. Worse, a supporting force from the 3rd Division got separated and never made it to Schweinfurt. The American formation was crippled even before reaching enemy airspace. At 1 p.m., as the bombers crossed into Germany, the sky erupted. Over 300 German fighters rose to meet them. Messerschmitt Bf-109s, FW-190s, and heavy twin-engine Zerstörer, armed with rockets and 20mm cannons. The German tactics were brutal and brilliant: head-on attacks to smash cockpits, wave assaults of 20 to 40 fighters at a time, rockets fired to scatter formations, cannon bursts that shredded wings like paper. A tail gunner recalled, "They came straight at us. I fired until the guns froze. I couldn't even tell who I was shooting at anymore." Bombers fell, engines burned, wings tore, men vanished into the wind. The air was filled with smoke, fire, and metal fragments. And still, they pushed on. At 2:06 p.m., the remaining formations reached Schweinfurt. Below them, the city bristled with flak guns. SFX, boom, boom, boom. Black bursts exploded around the bombers. Shrapnel ripped through fuselages. Bombardiers took over control of their aircraft. Everything depended on them. Bombardier Lieutenant Charles Smith: "Doors open. Bombs away." Thousands of 500-pound bombs cascaded downward onto the factories. The Kugellagerwerke exploded in a massive cloud of dust and fire. Oil tanks erupted, steel buildings collapsed. But the cost? Unthinkable. Before and after the drop, the Luftwaffe pressed their attacks relentlessly. A B-17 named the Lonesome Polecat spun out of formation, trailing flames. No parachutes. Another, Miss Wachita, broke in half midair. By the time the last bombs fell, the American force was bleeding from every direction. If the inbound flight was hell, the return was torture. The Luftwaffe hunted the broken American groups, all the way to the German border. A waist gunner remembered, my hands were numb. I was firing blind. I couldn't feel the trigger anymore. Some bombers limped with 2 engines, some with 1, some had none. Crews tossed guns, ammunition, even armor plates, just to keep their aircraft aloft. Over the English Channel, many B-17s finally gave up. Crews bailed out, some landed in the water, some never surfaced. At airfields across England, ground crews watched the horizon, with tears in their eyes. The bombers that returned did so with holes the size of doors, with blood-stained floors, with missing engines, and missing men. When the tally was made, the numbers were devastating. 291 B-17s dispatched, 60 shot down, 138 damaged beyond repair. Over 600 airmen killed, missing, or captured. The 8th Air Force had never suffered losses like this. America called it Black Thursday, and the shock waves echoed across the Atlantic. The U.S. suspended deep daylight raids for months. The doctrine of unescorted bombing had collapsed. Only the arrival of the P-51 Mustang in early 1944 would make such missions possible again, but for the men of October 14, 1943, that was too late. Schweinfurt did slow German production, but at a staggering cost. Yet the legacy of Black Thursday is not just about factories or strategy, it is about courage. The courage of men who climbed into freezing aircraft, knowing they might never return. Men who fought fires, tended to wounded comrades, and held their formations, even as flames licked their wings. Men who stood when the sky itself fell apart. They were sons, brothers, husbands, ordinary men who performed extraordinary acts. Their legacy lives in every page of history and in every moment of freedom. This was Black Thursday, not just a mission, but a sacrifice, a turning point. A day the sky turned black, but the courage of men burned brighter than ever.